Is the Presidential Fitness Challenge ever coming back?
Rachel Fisher is working on it with diligence right now. Her and Katrina Piercy, they are
Yes.
working on it, but there's been some things tied up with, again, with legal issues and other
Hmm.
organizations. So I would say we have said that is one of the priorities. Admiral Reed is also on this because I've shared with them, that since I often wear something that has a Sports Council logo on it, people come up to me in the streets and they'll share their stories about how much that council meant to them when they were younger.
Welcome back, guys, to another week of Mops and Mo's. Today, we are taking Mops and Mo's to the White House, sort of, kind of. We're talking to somebody who's been in the White House. Alex?
Yeah, this is a good one. We're talking to Rob Wilkins, and technically we're talking to the Honorable Robert Wilkins, as he is a presidential appointee. Rob is a 26-year Air Force veteran. That career took him all around the world, culminating at the Pentagon, where he was responsible for managing congressional staff delegations all over the military. Since retiring from the Air Force as a Master Sergeant, he ended up becoming a few different roles relevant to the military, but most notably for this episode, a member of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. He's also senior military editor for Muscle and Fitness and head of veterans outreach for Sightline Media, which is Military Times' parent company. While he was deployed in West Germany during the Cold War, Rob started getting involved in bodybuilding, which led him to getting in touch with the Weider brothers, Joe and Ben Weider, the co-founders of the IFBB. That relationship continued, and once he was back in the States, it led to him being appointed as the IFBB Liaison to the military, starting lifelong efforts on Rob's part to encourage fitness nationwide. When we recorded this episode, Rob was finishing his second term on the council. If you watch the news, the Biden administration has just appointed a new slate of council members. Rob served terms under both President Trump and President Biden, one of very few to serve multiple terms, even fewer to span two administrations, and very, very few to serve under presidents of different parties. He continues to stay closely involved in the work of the council and more broadly, the Department of Health and Human Services. And fun fact, Rob is also president of the DC chapter of Rolling Thunder. So if you see a whole bunch of motorcycles rolling through DC, keep an eye out for Rob.
You mentioned the President's Council on Fitness, and I would encourage folks, it's probably one of those things that you've heard about in passing, or especially if you think back to kind of like, well, I guess depending on your age, elementary school and doing, presidential fitness tests and that sort of thing. But it's been around since the 50s. And I know Alex and I, we've talked a lot about, the different articles from the mid-century about fitness and culture. And a lot of those are related to the starting of this council. So definitely look it up. We'll drop some stuff in the show notes that'll link to different pieces on this council. It's a fascinating look. And Rob, I mean, he mentions this in the podcast, like he's in a really interesting place where you're kind of straddling this line between the political side of this whole conversation and then also sort of the realistic side around where this country is going when we think about things like obesity rates. We touch a little bit on physical education getting cut, conversations around nutrition and what that means. So he's definitely in an interesting position, and it's definitely a really unique and cool conversation that exposes, or maybe not exposes, but touches on a corner of the policymaking fitness industry that a lot of folks, I would imagine, aren't very familiar with.
I know I, for one, am optimistic that we'll see some news soon coming out of the council. Rob mentions during our conversation that COVID really threw a wrench in their operations, and even much before COVID, we saw some challenges in terms of the council having not quite as much power as they originally had shortly after they were founded and things like that. But with the appointment of a new council here recently and kind of commitment to a few projects that are going on at HHS, and you'll hear a little bit about some things we're excited about during this conversation with Rob. I would keep an eye out in the news for anything new coming from the President's Council.
And I think too, didn't he appointed us as honorary members of this council?
Yeah, for sure. I heard that.
Yeah, you'll hear that happen. We don't make a huge deal about it. We don't publicize it, but we have officially been designated honorary members of this council. So, as honorary Members of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, Alex and I would like to welcome you to this week's episode with Rob Wilkins. Enjoy.
Maybe this is the first question, and I picked this up from a YouTube channel that I watch. But you mentioned every bodybuilder from essentially the golden age. Who's the most famous person in your phone?
Who's the most famous person in my phone?
Yeah,
Probably the late Colin Powell. I had his address and his number and all, and he was the guy I always looked up to. So I got a chance to meet him about 20 years ago. And then about 7-8 years ago, I asked him, I had been asking him for an interview for a long time for a magazine that I work with called Vietnam Magazine. And he kept saying one day. And then that one day I got a note in the mail, and it said, "Rob, I'm ready." And for many years, the letters would be signed Colin or Colin Powell. And at the end of this time, it said CP. And from that day on, he signed everything off CP, Colin Powell. So I just thought, wow, that was so great. And when you asked me that question, which is a good question, I always thought about, if I lose my phone, people will have General Powell's address. I can't have that happen.
that's a good point. I never thought about that. Somebody with a ton of famous people on their phone, if they lose it, just give them a call. Somebody's going to call Arnold Schwarzenegger off your phone.
Yeah. So, yeah, but because I respected General Powell so much, that's the most famous person, I think, in my phone. Yeah. Still there.
That's awesome. Can we start with, because I don't know if a lot of people really truly know. There's a twofold question. And the second part of this, you can just laugh in our faces. But what is the President's Council of Fitness? And secondly, how do Alex and I get appointed to this?
So, great question. 1956, President Eisenhower, coming after World War II, thought that Americans, especially American males, were getting soft. The world had changed dramatically because we had now become a more modernized society. So, bathrooms were now in the house. So you didn't have to take a walk to the outhouse down the road. Most people were starting to get buses and bikes and being driven to school, as opposed to walking that quote unquote 2 miles to school and 2 miles back. Life of convenience has started to happen. More food, more selections of food, and people had more money to buy food. So as the weight started to creep up, he was concerned that we would not be prepared to fight our battles. So he created this council to bring it to his attention. And the first vice president, or the first executive director, was Richard Nixon, who was the vice president of the time. Or the President's Council in the beginning, they had a seat at the executive table with the president. So often when things were being discussed, somebody who represented the President's Council would be there. So that was the start of this council. And it's gone up and down, through different administrations. But President Kennedy was also really well known for it. And he called it having the life of vigor, where he thought it was so important that we exercise. And we moved in, as you both know, being fans of President Kennedy, that's where a lot of folks, especially our Vietnam veterans, when they consider the President's Council, it takes them back to President Kennedy and his time as our commander-in-chief. Now, how do you and Alex get involved?
Yeah, the real question.
That's a long road because, I've wanted to be on the council since I was 12 years old. And I just put it in my mind that one day this is going to happen. And so I just tried to do things that kept me related to fitness and health and the military. And then I had a good chance to meet people who were very helpful to make me a good candidate. And I was selected. And so now being reselected under President Biden, it's like, how do you do better than actualize your dream? My dream was to do this, and I'm living my dream. So we'll see if we can find some ways to try to, get you guys involved. But a lot of it is you just have to be at the right place at the right time and have luck.
That's awesome. You mentioned in there that in previous years, there was a seat at the executive table for this council. Yes. I guess another kind of twofold question. When did that go away? Like around what time did that go away? And do you know why?
I don't know for sure when it went away. I think what happens is things are brand new. It's the shiny thing. So with the president, who was also a 5-star general, this one of his focuses, of course, there's lots of focus. So there's lots of important people who are going to be there. And the president is really on this. And then with President Kennedy, the same type of thing. This was in the forefront of his mind, to being physically fit, making sure that we're participating on the field, not just watching. So I just think over the years, as our country grew, I would say maybe social media, and there's just more things coming at the White House. Maybe it just separated a bit. So I do know that the leadership now, they're very, very engaged and very, very prominent in their roles of making sure that the council is a active body that does good work on behalf of the president and the American people. And I'm really, really glad that the people now, who are leading us are so enthused and are so supportive of the efforts of the members of the council.
Yeah, I mean, because, I guess the reason I asked that is because, and we'll get into some of this later, but you hear all this about how obesity rates are going up, and you mentioned, the lifestyle of convenience, like that's obviously only gotten worse.
Yes.
And yet you would think that if an elected official is going to prioritize that, you would want people like you advising them. And I'm sure you still do in some capacity, but it's just interesting to hear that, literally sitting next to them in some sense is not a feature anymore. Not really a question of mine, just more of a thought.
Mm-hmm. I see the importance of it because the most important thing that I personally feel is our health. You can lose your job, you can lose money, you can lose many things, but those friends of mine who have really been sick and it was a touch and go for a while, they tell you that there's nothing more to treasure than your health. And there is a German saying that says that the person with their health has 1,000 wishes. The person without their health has but one. And so I just think about that all the time to try to make sure that I'm doing what I can to be an example of health and fitness for my family and for my friends, and trying to be an advocate to inspire Americans to move more. Be it some people say physical fitness, some people say exercise, some people say movement, whatever it is that you feel comfortable in using, whatever terminology, whatever it is, from standing to running to shooting a basketball or golfing, dancing, just move more to burn more calories. I suggest and recommend that that's what you do, and have fun doing it too.
Yeah.
So for the sake of the audience here, briefly, I know we are all familiar with this, but just to level set with them, we've been mentioning JFK. We've been mentioning his article, The Soft American, which all of us are huge fans of. You even quoted it talking about being on the field, not just a spectator.
Mm-hmm.
JFK wrote that was one of his final acts before taking office, right? He had already promised the article to Sports Illustrated. Then he got elected. He went on a retreat with his wife. And during that time, wrote this article that has kind of stood the test of time, is still read and cited frequently today.
Mm-hmm.
What gets me every time when I look through it is that he cites a series of trends, a series of problems. And in every single case through the article, those trends still completely apply today. And not only do they still apply today, they are dramatically worse today. I guess the question here, or just an opportunity to talk about it, really is, do we think even in that era the council had much impact on those trends? And what is it that we've seen these problems? We know these problems are existential threats,
right?
But over the course of decades, we still haven't turned the corner on any of those trends. They're continuing to get worse.
Sure. Great question, Alex. I think some of this is information, education, and personal accountability. I can give you all the resources. I can give you all the films, the videos. I can provide you the best equipment. But if you do not take it upon yourself to get moving, what else can I do? I've talked to so many folks, and some of them jokingly say they wish they can take a pill that would get them physically fit. But, being around a lot of veterans, especially Vietnam veterans, so many of them tell me how important fitness was to them growing up, that they grew up throwing a ball, some cases, like me and some of my friends, throwing rocks at cars and running from them, ringing doorbells and running, climbing trees to neighbors so that we can get to their apple trees or pear trees. Well, guess what? Throwing a ball might be like throwing a grenade. Running from folks might be like when you're doing stuff in the military. You're running from whatever. Climbing a tree could be like climbing a fence or climbing a rope while you're in the military serving. So a lot of those skills for those bad boys can translate over into your time in the military. Like, you do know how to run and crawl and do all these active things. Well, now I'm hearing that, the recruiters are having such a tough time because kids, they don't really, and I'm not joking, they don't know how to throw a ball. They haven't thrown a ball. They haven't climbed ropes. They haven't skinned their knees and swam. And no disrespect to what they do, that's their choice. But and the profession of military arms, these are things that are vital to your success and the unit success in the defense of our nation. So those things have to be paramount in our youth. And I think it has to go back to starting at kindergarten, where recess is important. And physical education is an important component of a person's overall development. I think the mental, physical, spiritual, all that goes in hand. And if we skip one of them, in my personal opinion, that's not helping contribute to a whole person concept.
So, I mean, I know I'm much more grateful now than I was as a kid, right? But of just growing up in a neighborhood where there were no fences between yards, where the parents could just like kick kids out into the neighborhood, and we'd play capture the flag and ghost in the graveyard and kick the can or whatever the game of the day was. But I worry sometimes, because a lot of what we do on this podcast is talk about some of this information, like provide people more and more information. And
sure,
one of the things that I worry about with that is that resonates with people who already agree with us. Like, I think most of the audience we draw doesn't need to be convinced that fitness matters. They're here listening because they already understand fitness matters. I don't think more information is going to change the minds of the people who don't agree with us yet. I think it's a matter of like somehow making it sexy or popular or getting it to be a part of the dialogue somehow. And I don't know if we're making as much headway on that as I would like to. Have you bumped into that? I don't know. I don't know what the answer there is.
Yes, I agree. Social influencers can have a big part in helping promote physical activity. Like Billie Eilish, I think that's her last name. She's a singer. She started working out recently. So Apple, I saw on Apple News where she worked out, because part of it was that by the end of the previous tour she was on, she was whooped. She would have to skip events or skip some of the concerts because her body had had enough. So she was shutting down. She was getting sick, and somehow she got connected to working out. And now she says she can't imagine not working out, even if she's not on tour. Like, she goes to the gym religiously like 4 times. So now, with a person of her influence with millions of followers, if she says the importance of working out, I would suggest that maybe hundreds or thousands of her fans will give it a shot. And out of that number, a few of them will stick with it. If you have another celebrity, for example, say The Rock, I think a lot of his fans, they might follow his lead, and maybe they do follow his lead. I just recently saw a post from Halle Berry, and she talked about the importance of physical activity and fitness. So I wrote her a message. Hopefully I'll hear back from her, because she's a bit older, but she's still maintaining a good physicality. She's still maintaining mobility. She still looks healthy. And so, when you have people like that, a lot of superstars in the film and TV and athlete industries, we can use them in some aspects to help us be Pied Pipers of physical activity and be advocates for physical movement, exercise, and just living a healthier life.
This might be, I don't want this to be a controversial comment, but maybe it will be. And I was thinking about this as Alex was talking about, the information that we want to put out. You have to compete against this attention economy, right? Like, we hear all the time about TikTok and Instagram, and you've got whatever it is, 5 seconds and that kind of makes it challenging, in the fitness space, because really that is more dependent upon staying power and sticking with something for a long time. And I guess what I'm interested in, and we can chat about this or not, but we've mentioned this before on the podcast, this kind of body positivity movement, which I'm not against by any means. But you could see where there's this fine line between, like you mentioned, celebrities using their platform to promote fitness, weight loss, healthy eating. At the same time, though, you do see a lot of folks in that space promoting this idea of like, I'm perfect the way that I am. And I think that that's fine. But then you get into the sticky subject of like overweight people being displayed on the cover of magazines. And is that what we're after? Or are we okay saying that, you should push yourself a little bit. You should work hard. Again, probably more controversial than I want that to be, but it's something that I think about quite a bit.
Yeah, I think about it as well. I've had conversations with people about this, and talking to a few physicians, like, we're not just as plain and simple as we sometimes think. Because I've gone to the Marine Corps Marathon a few times, and a few times some of the people coming across with amazing times, when you look at their body type, you would say, how are they doing it? Because they just seemed bigger than a lot of runners. Like I remember this one guy looked like he was close to like 230, 240 pounds, and he was literally flying because somehow his body type, he had worked it out somehow, you know. And I've seen people doing yoga, and I've seen videos of people doing CrossFit and stepping and all these different activities, dancing. It's way more mobile than I am, and they can do amazing stretches and stuff. So I guess what it is maybe the body types is not as important as what the physical numbers are. Like when you go get a medical checkup, and if your doctor says your cholesterol and your numbers are okay. Now, not a doctor, of course, but maybe just the body types of one type of body being the healthy body is not it. Maybe there are many types of structures and forms that could still be healthy. They just don't look like the traditional copies of health or the traditional look of health. So I would be interested in if there's more studies into that and learning more about it, but I'm not here to judge anyone what they do, because I think they're doing the best they can, and the least or the last thing they need is another person coming down on them saying you should. I don't know what you should do. I just think you should move as much as you possibly can and be healthy as you can.
Yeah, Drew's got my gears turning now. I had directions I was planning on going, and I did not expect that question. But it's something I have gone into a little bit before.
It's a sticky subject.
I'll shout out some smart folks. Like most of like the evidence-based stuff I've learned about obesity in the last year or two has come from the Nadolsky brothers, who are both doctors that are in that space. And they've got a really good platform. It's called The Docs Who Lift. They're really into fitness, but they specialize in treating patients with obesity. And there's some really interesting dialogue around like the state of what we talk about and the nuance of it, right? Because like it turns out shaming somebody who is overweight is going to have exactly the opposite of the effect you wanted, right? Like you think you're trying to push that person to try harder, and that is not what you will achieve. It will draw that person more inward. They'll be more ashamed. They'll be more embarrassed. They'll be unwilling to put themselves out there and try the things you want them to try in the first place. So I think like figuring out how we have that conversation, because people should feel comfortable in their body regardless of the way their body looks.
Right.
That doesn't mean they shouldn't also strive for greater health and fitness. That those two can coexist. And I see these conversations, like all of us have been on social media enough to see that, like, if somebody posts a picture of themselves where they're confident in a body that is not like traditionally fit or something, you will see some absolutely disgusting comments on it. And I think there's absolutely a world here. I think about sometimes, like when people walk into the gym, they always notice whoever's like the most jacked or lifting the most weight. And that's cool. And that guy's awesome. But that guy isn't displaying any bravery by being in the gym. It is his comfort zone. He knows exactly what it's like. He's been there all the time. There's nothing stressful about it. But the people who are in there and don't know how to use the machines or are looking really awkward trying to mess with a barbell, that person is scared and overcoming it. That person is exposing themselves to a new stress. And I think that's pretty cool and like worthy of admiration and spotlighting and things like that in a way that doesn't happen a lot.
Yes. So Alex, that's a great comment, because this happened to me a few times in my gym. There was a lady there that I saw her with her kids, and I never saw her without her kids, but they would be on the treadmill, the mom in the middle and the two boys on the corners. And I can see that she probably knew how important it was for health, because she was the example for her boys. And over a course of 3 or 4 months, she was getting in better and better shape. And I noticed that the baggy sweatshirt went away and the baggy pants went away. And now she's wearing a tank top and a shorts, and her boys now they're not walking, they're jogging, and now they're running. And so I spoke to a few of my friends and I said, how do we politely, without any kind of, without trying to offend the lady, go tell her, great job, and we can tell you're making a difference and you're sticking to it and you're dedicated. He says, we just go tell her. So I said, well, you tell her. And so we went and told her, we said, ma'am, no disrespect, we just want to tell you, way to go. We've seen you here for the last few months and you're making a big difference. And she goes, like I said, she's swallowing and her eyes welled up. She goes, that's all I need to hear. So thank you so much. You don't know what that means to me. So from that point on, when we see this lady, she goes out of her way to go say hello to us, because we made a big difference to her. And she knows she has support in the gym. Like, there are a lot of folks in that gym. All you need to do is say, I see you, keep going, good luck. Let me know if I can help you, or thanks, because you being here motivates me. And they're like, I'm motivating you. I'm like, yeah, because it's easy not to come to the gym, but when I know you're going to be here, I want to be here too. So kind words go a long way, and you never know what someone's struggle is internally. So by saying kind words, I think that's a great thing you can do. So good comment there, Alex.
This kind of leads me to something I was going to say earlier, because you started to point out how like normal physical activities that kids do as they play outside translate really well to the military. And we've started to touch in this conversation on how this is a multifaceted thing, right? Like one piece is we want kids to be physically active and healthy so that they can serve in the military. Another piece is we want people to feel comfortable in environments like the gym or group exercise or whatever it is, so they can take care of themselves. And sometimes I wonder if we get like too pigeonholed, like, because weight loss is like the dominant conversation in the fitness world. There's a lot of overweight people. We want to help them lose weight. But I think there's power in some of the narratives that are considered less. And the one that's popped up so much for me is over the course of the last decade in particular, but even before that, we've seen schools cutting physical activity, cutting recess, cutting physical education or gym class, trying to get kids in the classroom more, because the way schools are evaluated is the grades on standardized tests that those kids get. But that's so misguided, given all the research we have, that kids can't learn and can't focus effectively unless they have enough physical activity to like for proper development, to get the energy out of their system so that they can calm down and sit still for a while. I don't understand how like we get myopically focused on either losing weight or building muscle, and we miss out on some of these underlying, like the mental health component, the learning, the social component, whatever it is. There's so much more here, and I don't know if we do a great job talking about it.
So much research has been shown. Like you and I have talked about the Naperville studies before. There are so many studies that talked about the importance of physical activity and mental health, and some even suggest that it might be just as effective, and maybe in some cases, the effects are quicker than taking drugs. Now, again, I'm not a physician, and those are some bold statements, and I would have to see a lot more research to see those numbers and the stats, but that is a place to start. My friends who've been in the military for many years, like I was in for 26 years, many of them said once they start exercising, for particularly one guy, he said golf saved his life. He was on 4 or 5 medications, and then he became a golfer. And he said that was the thing that changed it, because now there's a community, there's exercise, there's people who understand what he's went through. And while he's moving, it just made him feel better than taking drugs. So for some folks that might work, others, they might need, the assistance of drugs, but there's a whole lot of things in the toolkit to try. And while one might not get the direct answer or the one answer you need, maybe trying a sampling of this and some of that and some of this, and increasing your sleeping and being more, having more or better nutrition, all those things can affect you in a positive manner, but you got to use all of them. It's not just one thing.
I want to back up slightly, maybe to the questions about the council, and just give you the chance to talk about what are some things that you guys are working on right now.
So what we're really working on is getting the word out there about the National Youth Sports Strategy, that how important that it is that kids, no matter what their physical background, no matter where they stand, have an opportunity to play on the ball fields, or whatever it is. If it's a court, if it's swimming, if it's whatever they want to do, we want to provide the opportunity. And often finances dictate who and who cannot play. Because when you're in one area, if you're fortunate enough that your family has the resources to play, especially travel sports, then you have those opportunities, and you have these great travel teams all around the nation. But how about if you can't? If your family is doing all they can just to survive and they don't have that excess money, that should not preclude you from playing sports and from being active and having the opportunity to relieve stress and develop new friendships and the lessons of dedication and discipline and integrity that you get from playing sports. So how do we change that more people have the opportunity, and how do we make people want to play sports? As you guys probably know, that girls are dropping off quicker than ever before. And by the time most kids are 13, they do give up sports, especially competitive sports. And maybe the thing is, kids, if you ask them, why do you play sports? Do you guys know what the number one reason is?
Is it their parents?
My parents made me.
The number one reason why they play sports is to have fun. And the fun component, when you look at what coaches say, is almost down to like 40s. where it's rated. It's down, it's so low toward the bottom. They want to come out there and laugh and mess around with their friends and enjoy if it's outside or if it's on the court, but often the pressures of trying to win championships and win games, and then kids who don't, if they don't perform, they don't play. And especially if you're paying for this, you have parents who get so angry, they're in the coach's ear, because if you're paying $500,000-$600,000 for a team sport and your child's not playing, that's also a very delicate issue and a tough thing to be in. So all these issues are kind of tough, and it takes people with common sense, calmness, communication, and I guess a bit of empathy to think, how do we get to the issues? Because what works here in Leesburg, Virginia, might not work in Houston. So they're all individual too. Each area is different. You just have to communicate with people and find out where can you meet them at a place of common sense that you can both get what you need out of the activity that you're doing.
For something like that, how do you guys measure success? Is it, is it number of kids that have signed up? Like, how do you track if that's actually improving?
Well, some of it is from the letters you receive. Like I have received some letters that I share with the school. There was a school, actually it's here. It's the Plato School in Plato, Missouri. So these were kids, kindergarten kids, that they decided to walk a mile a day. And I don't know if the teacher had purposely thought they were going to do it every day, but they did it for 71 consecutive days. And so I found them through Instagram, and I wrote them a note, and I sent them some President's Council lapel pens and stickers and stuff. And I just wanted to say I was just really proud of you guys that you stuck it out, that you went that long being physically active. And so the teacher also shared how many other lessons came with this. So the kids who might have been a little bit shy in the beginning now knew that at this time they were going to be with their buddies, their team. They also were walking paths, so they were learning things about biology. They were looking at the green grass. They were experiencing the rain and the snow and all these other elements that came because they're outside walking, became teaching moments for the teacher. And so she also said that from time to time, a kid would touch her or tap her and say, I'm not sure if so-and-so is feeling so good today, because the children had understood how they naturally behave. So when somebody's off a little bit, they were smart enough and tuned enough to go talk to the teacher and say, so-and-so might not be having a good day today. And then she can go check up on them. So there were so many powerful, great lessons that the kindergarten students learned by just walking a mile a day for 71 straight days. So measuring, that's a great measurement to me, that they learned, they were inclusive, they were concerned about their fellow students, they got exercise in. And I would assume that these kids also went home and told their parents about this great experience, and maybe their parents started exercising. So the way we change America is one person at a time. I don't think it's realistic to think that we're going to make this big movement and we're going to have a big shift at once. It's you sharing information with your friends who say, because Drew told me, I'll do this. It's Alex in using his platform and the things he's doing to inspire and to motivate people. And at the end, the cumulative effect is we all are making people more active, moving, and they become advocates of fitness. And that's how we'll change America.
So you said that the first thing you said when you were asked what is the council focused on right now was the National Youth Sports Strategy. Yes. Can you lay out a little bit, like, what is that? How do people get involved in that? Like, are there initiatives within that? What does that look like?
So it's basically, again, what are you doing in your local community? So the President's Council doesn't want to dictate what you can and what you can't do. So, for example, if you go to health.gov and you click on the link for President's Council, then you'll click on another link and you'll say the National Youth Sports Strategy. You can find out we have like over 200 partners right now. You can read and see what each partner, what each organization is doing. So if it's a running club, if it's a weightlifting club, if it's a walking club, yoga, dancing, there are all these clubs inside that grouping. So you can find out what you're doing. And if you don't see something that's you're familiar with, then you contact us and we will, our staff will get back with you and tell you, here are some options of what you can do. But it's basically movement in a safe, effective way.
The full name here is the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, right? So
yes.
Do you guys, I mean, here's me, with my day job, kind of working along those same lines in terms of having these, we'll call them lines of effort. Is that how you guys operate? Or, do you have a sports focus and a fitness focus and a nutrition focus, or is it more of a holistic approach and it's just kind of, hey, we're addressing kind of the larger nationwide conversation around these things, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think there is not one answer for this. We're a work in progress because the council was really inactive because of COVID for about 2 years. And so now under the leadership of Rear Admiral Paul Reed and our acting executive director, Rachel Fisher, and Dr. Katrina Piercy, we're doing a lot of things, but we're probably trying to do catch up. So what we are trying to do is, here are the issues that we're faced with. How do we address them? And we just keep working at it. I don't have the perfect answer for you because I just don't know, but I do know that we're tackling it. And if anything gets to this level of difficulty, one answer is not going to be it. I think the way that you make progress is by addressing issues, listening to the public, asking people for their suggestions, for their advice, asking people in large groups, what are the problems you're facing? And maybe this is how we can help you or provide some resources to you. But I don't think that I will ever be able to provide you one answer to say, we're doing this and that's going to always work. Because again, what works in Harlem doesn't work in LA, or may not, but we all want to take these cases individually and give everybody their attention that they need to figure out what's the best thing to help you or them. Yeah.
First off, I got to address the irony of you pointing out that the President's Council was really inactive because of COVID, because that speaks to a broader trend in physical activity because of COVID. And I think there's a conversation there. And first, I want to address, before we go down any rabbit holes, I've gotten plenty of messages from people talking about like why isn't the government talking about physical activity and better nutrition and losing weight and respiratory health and aerobic, whatever they are. They absolutely are. If you go to HHS's website, if you go to the CDC's website, there are reams and reams of research. It just turns out, going back to what we talked about with the amount of information available,
right?
Just saying common sense, true things does not get you any news coverage. Nobody gets excited. Nobody gets angry.
We need thirst traps in government documents. I think that's the way
there's no excitement.
We need Alex and tights on the cover of
there we go.
The CDC's website.
But I wonder if we've got like enough distance at this point where it's a little bit less contentious, it's a little bit less conspiratorial or adversarial or whatever it is. If there's an opportunity now to have a serious conversation about COVID was obviously a respiratory illness, right? And there's enough data, it's conclusive. The more physically fit you are, especially aerobically, and the better body composition you have, the less severe your outcomes are going to be with respiratory infections like COVID. And that seems like a conversation that should be important as we talk about how, as a country, as a society, we make sure we're prepared for things like that in the future.
Right. That's evidence-based. So what you're saying is based by science and factual. And I think that, when you're on a council like this, there are so many things that come from you. You have to remember there's 320 something million people in our country. Everybody's idea, suggestion has to be vetted. Like, one of the great things I think about the council, and especially under Admiral Reed and Rachel, everyone gets heard. There is no, we're not going to listen to that. We're not going to address that. They look at everything. And so when you have, that's part of their job, though. They also represent HHS, and there's other things that occupy their time. And all of us who are on the council, we're volunteers, meaning we have other jobs and we have families. So everyone's probably doing the best they can with the time they have, but the information the incoming information doesn't stop. So sometimes as you're trying to get an answer, things can get backed up. Then you got to give it a full court press and trying to catch up again. But that's one of the reasons why I think coming on podcasts like this is helpful, so that when people understand that we're trying, that's the first thing, we're trying. And if it was easy, we would not be in the issues and have the problems we're having. So what are you doing to help us? Are you moving? Are you exercising? Are you getting your medical checkups? Because we can't take care of every single problem for everybody, but hand in hand, we can probably do a lot more damage. There's strength in numbers. And I always think we're Americans, not Americans. So how do we figure this out? We'll get there somehow, but we just have to understand that it will take all of us. It will take this entire village, this entire nation to figure there's problems, from politicians to moms, from dads to grandpops and grandmoms and uncles and aunts and people like you, helping helping provide evidence-based factual information that is not based on a supplement company or somebody trying to hawk their wares. And listen, they have a business to do. They have things that they need to do. But let's say, as you already shared with us, CDC, HHS, I'm sure like ACE and American College of Sports Medicine, lifestyle medicine websites, all these folks, they're probably providing great information. But maybe you have to do a little work and research on your own too.
So you mentioned, and this is something Alex and I laugh about all the time, people hawking their wares, especially towards the military. But we'll talk about this from the nationwide. It was either I think this week or last week, Lunchables got implemented as a meal option in cafeterias, and it was touted as this healthy solution and blah 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 blah. Do you guys, maybe this is a two-parter, maybe it's not, but like, do you guys have any voice in the room when those decisions are being made? Because what you just said was beautiful, this idea of politicians and everyone playing a role in this, but we are constantly bombarded with situations like this where politicians are voting and saying, yep, let's put Lunchables in school cafeterias, when every dietitian in the country arguably is saying that's not a good idea. So I'm curious as to the commentary there, because I agree with what you're saying. I think the answer is nuanced, it's complex, it takes everybody. But yet here's people who are legitimately and objectively saying, no, we're going to do this, even though we know it's not the right decision.
So I personally do not know how far the council's, so maybe that's an Admiral Reed question. So maybe what we can do is try to connect you and Alex with Rachel and Admiral Reed for those type of questions, because, there is pay grades here and I'm at the bottom of it. So I just want to make sure that I don't overstep and overspeak, because I don't know. I'm sure it's somebody in our government is looking at these things, but, there's something in the bodybuilding world, I heard of the word better bad choices. So when you do a better bad choice, both of them might not be ideal, but this one is just a little bit better. So I don't really know so much about Lunchables in schools right now. But what was the choice prior to Lunchables? So is this a step up? I don't know, but I think let's talk with Admiral Reed and Rachel, and maybe someone from the agriculture department that we can help provide you a better answer than the mumble I just gave you.
I think it's incredibly valid. I think it kind of brings another question to mind, which is for you, kind of as you rose through the ranks, so to speak, and you mentioned that you'd wanted to be on this council since I think you said you were 12. Yes. And you went through, you were very successful in bodybuilding. You've kind of been around the fitness space for a long time. What were some of the things you learned about just the scope of this problem set of sort of national fitness and health as you got to the point where you're at now, and your perspective and your optic has broadened so much?
So my perspective is everybody's situation is different. I went somewhere on we were sent to go talk to a school, and I brought where I live, my answers to their problems from my perspective. They don't have the same issues and problems, or I don't have the same issues and problems they have. Like where I was telling them to go outside and jog, they were telling me that, that might not be a safe thing to do because somebody might take their sneakers. Where I was saying, well, if you can't go outside, could you go up and down the stairs? Because they'll turn out the lights and something can happen to me when those lights go out. So there are people who don't exercise because it is a serious safety concern. And, just this week, I think there was 70 cities that got together through the World Health Organization to talk about healthy streets, meaning sidewalks, and taking care of potholes and making sure that people have access to parks. That's a very, very important component because most people or many people don't have access to gyms. So what do we do and how do we help those who don't have access? Because years ago, I think it was Dr. Ken Cooper, an Air Force guy, father of aerobics, that he was in consideration to be Surgeon General. And I think one of his ideas or initiatives was to provide everybody, all American citizens, a certain amount of money to go to a fitness center or to join a gym. And it didn't take. And I think his analogy was it can cost $300-400 a year to go to a fitness center or a gym, but it might cost us $25,000 to $50,000 for people who have medical conditions up to heart attacks. So wouldn't it be better to be preventive as opposed to reactionary? And I think maybe that's one of the issues, or one of the ideas that we can think about more. How do we start being more preventive instead of reactionary? And we start thinking about lifespan and health span. You know, they're two different things. Your lifespan can be 67, but your health span can be 55, meaning you have 12 years of being sick, maybe sitting in a chair, looking out of the window and wishing that you would have taken better care of yourself. That's a Mickey Mantle quote. If I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And so we are also trying to share that in the veteran community, that do you want to walk your granddaughter down the aisle? Do you want to ride your motorcycle an additional 2, 3, 4 years? Do you want to go to these reunions and possibly, you know, get up and dance and do these things? And when we put it to them that way, that seems to find that magic moment where they said, I do want to exercise a little bit more. I don't have to do what I used to do, but if I start walking a few more steps, if I park my car a few steps away from the door, like I used to just take that veteran space in the front, now I go to the back. If I go up and down my stairs in my house a few times, whatever it is to get me burning more calories daily, times a week, times a month, times a year, can get you to lose some significant weight. So trying to find them where they're at is important. And again, as maybe Alex said, not body shaming, not fitness shaming, just saying you are where you are. How can we get you better? And guess what? You got a community behind you that says, hurrah, let's go. Aim high, as we say in the Air Force.
So you got me thinking a little bit, and Drew addressed like rising through the ranks and interacting with senior leaders, which is something you do all the time lately. Have you, like, who have you run into? Who's out there? Are there, and I'm specifically thinking about elected leaders, honestly, because we're talking about national policy type of stuff. We're talking about national messages kind of stuff. Have you found anyone in that space who really is ready to like embrace this physical activity cause, champion it, like help drive the narrative in the policy making in the national leadership kind of community? Well,
let's say leadership from the military first, because that's really my focus, being a military veteran myself and family. General Wilkins has done a phenomenal job. Like, we were together on Veterans Day and we were talking about physical fitness, and he told me he was jogging in New York and all these things he was doing. And we talked about the National Guard and his concern for, you know, trying to make them healthier and more fit. And we were just tossing around ideas, and we thought about challenges and, you know, doing these type of things. And then the next thing I know, I'm speaking to his exec, and I'm speaking to all these guys and women in the Guard about physical fitness and nutrition and sleep. And I'm bringing in our buddy, Dan Bornstein, and he's helping. And so this community starts growing. And now, you know, last night I have dinner with a number of National Guards who are working on H2F programs. And they're so excited and so inspired. But General Hoganson, he started this because he said it's important for him, meaning it's important for the Guard. And I know that the Air Force and the Army, the Space Force, you know, they're starting to look at wearables, devices to track their measurements of physical activity. So I would assume every military commander, fitness is a key component to the success of our national readiness, security of our nation, meaning that's an important item to the military commanders as well. So elected leaders, I talked to Don Bacon a number of times, and I was with him last week, and he is looking to help us in any way. Help us, meaning help the nation become more fit. And does that need legislation? I know there's just people to go up there to go see him soon. But I also bet there are other members of Congress. I mean, I only know what I know, but I would assume there's a lot of members being contacted by a lot of fitness, health, nutritional organizations trying to do the right thing. But my feeling, again, is the more we can come together and address, maybe let's try to do these top 3 things. Let's accomplish something. Let's get these things done. Then we go to another list of top priorities, because when we're all in there individually, it's like tag your turn, tag my turn. I'm not sure how much we're getting done. And it's so crucial right now. Things are so bad that we got to get positive traction in making better things happen for the health of our nation and our young folks and our seniors as well.
So you mentioned, you know, kind of 3 things. And I know this is maybe a softball question, but if you, who knows, maybe the president does come to you and say these things, but if he walked into your door and said, hey, I'm going to go take a break for 2 days. Just take your top 3 things for health, fitness, and nutrition and do it. And it's going to happen. What would those 3 be?
So Drew, maybe you were trying to be funny, but this really did happen.
I assumed it probably did.
And so on the 4th of July, I got a chance to go to the White House. The president comes by and he's talking to the crowd. And then, I exchanged my pleasantries with him. And then toward the end with my family there and Bonnie Carroll from TAPS and Linda Davis, who worked in the VA, like people that are very real respect in our community, he puts his hands on my shoulder, says, I'm counting on you to help our nation get fit or get in shape. And I'm thinking, whoa, the commander in chief gave me an order. So that's when I really tuned up, like when I started reaching out to Alex and trying to get the H2F program and started reaching out to dozens of organizations and sharing that same comment with the folks at the President's Council who were so supportive of me and thought it was great that I had a chance to speak to the president about that. So if I had my dreams, it would get more people moving. I would probably making physical fitness mandatory in school, because there is enough research to show that those kids who exercise, it does so much for their social skills, it does so much for their self-confidence, it does so much for their grades. Athletes and people who exercise do better in school. There's, I think her name is Dr. Suzuki, who talks about getting the brain active and by moving and doing all these other things. And there's another great leader, Major General Sharon Bannister. We went to her office about 2 weeks ago. Before the first word was spoken, we had a minute of planks. She started our meeting with planks. And so she's just an awesome person who understands the importance of lifestyle medicine. There's a Dr. Reagan Stegman who has all this great information, and she can talk to you like a regular person, then she can break it down with the scientific data. There's Andrea Lindsay with the nutrition part. So we bring all these folks into the umbrella, and guess what? All of them want to be there. Nobody's saying, I don't want to do this. So, I think another thing on my dream list would be to have another summit with all these folks coming and sharing and talking information. And third, I would want to bring kids and youth in, tell us what we can do to make it better, because maybe you've been told what you should do. Maybe we should be asking the question, what do you want to do? And with kids reasoning and logical reasoning from adults and people who are experts in this field, we can come to this compromise to where it makes sense. Like, this is what we should do. 150 minutes, but if you want to do this, that works too. And if you want to do this, that works. But maybe they need a part of the solution. Kids and their active role and their involvement is paramount to probably the success of us moving forward, in my opinion.
So you got me thinking about, first off, you said having another summit, and that's something I keyed in on when I looked at the history of the council, is that was a regular thing early in the history of the council, was these massive summits on a national scale, highlighting all these efforts, and that hasn't happened in a long time. So that combined with the fact that a lot of the names you just named are military affiliated, and I think it's not hard to convince the military that fitness matters. The military kind of gets it. What I want to try and do is bridge that to convince the rest of our society that it matters, regardless of whether you're going to serve in the military. It matters for so many reasons that you've described that we already know. So one that came to mind, and I'm going to kind of snarkily point to there was during COVID, there was that video of all the celebrities singing Imagine together. And it was kind of cheesy and a little cringy and stuff like that.
There's always celebrities singing mashups.
There is, but if we look to old school, some of the JFK era stuff, some of the Eisenhower era stuff, public service announcements were a big deal. And I know canned, very official federal looking public service announcements aren't the most popular thing, but we've got a organization with nearly $1 trillion budget that's really concerned about the fitness of our youth. How do we not have a youth fitness public service announcement where we're bringing together known faces and names and having this conversation in a way that resonates with popular culture, not just in the military channels where we already get it, but getting something out there. And that feels like a role that HHS and the President's Council could be involved in. I would love to see something where people with serious national and global influence are having a public conversation about how important this is.
Alex, we're on it. I can't release the name of the folks in the organizations yet because it's all preliminary talks, but we went to meet somebody in the entertainment business not long ago, and they were so proud to tell me that they had earned a presidential fitness badge as a youth. And I thought, that's the breaking of the walls where these silos come down, because if I can identify with something that you're passionate about and I'm passionate about, maybe we can come to a workable solution and workable partnership. So Rachel and Admiral Reed and myself, we're working on it. The organization, they're trying to, find the right times, because this takes time. We have to find out what we can do, how we can do it, how soon we can do it, how effective. And by the way, there are folks looking for holes in everything we're doing too. It's like, gosh, give us a shot, just give us a chance. We don't have the perfect answer, and we're telling you that. But maybe for all the folks who have so many bright ideas, share them with us, because if you're right, we'll be happy to use it. But if you're just poking holes at us just because you can, that's not helpful. Come up with some workable solutions and helpful advice, and boy, you'll make our job easier. And I'll send you a coin. I'll be happy to.
Well, you already know this, but anything you need from Mops to Mo's, we're happy to help. So,
Yeah,
but I got to
we'll
ask
give
you
you
a
a
question
sticker.
all day.
All right.
Leg tuck stickers. Next time you're having a meeting with a general, skip the planks, do leg tucks. It'll be awesome.
No, man. Next time the
But-
president puts his hands on your traps, put a Mops and Mo sticker just right on his suit. I think that would really speak. That would speak volumes.
Well,
to
the
where we're at.
president, he exercises many days of the week, and the first lady does, and we're actually, trying to get more involvement there. But the weight of the world is on their shoulders, and there's only but so many asks you can do. So that's why he has councils like us, for us to do things on their behalf, to act on their behalf, to provide them information that's timely and evidence-based. And that's why I've just appointed the two of you fitness advocates to help me with all this, because you're such smart guys, passionate guys. And I would also think that we can also debate this. Like, passion is fine. We don't have to agree, because there isn't one way to get the fitness. But I think sometimes there's so many folks, they're afraid of disagreement that they don't get these conversations that are needed, and they don't get to a solution. So if there's something we don't agree with, let's iron it out. Let's talk with vigor and push and push and push, because we both want the same thing, and that's our nation to be healthy.
I'll embrace debate with you on this one. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but for the sake of conversation, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. However, as we mentioned early on, we talked about JFK, like literally every metric we would use to measure is getting worse. So where do you see, whether it's the council or somebody else kind of up there in that stratosphere, like why not? Like, my question is, like, why are we not doing anything about it? Why are we just paying it lip service? Why are we just putting faces in front of things and saying, hey, go and run? Like, I get that some of that works. I remember, commercials with Michael Jordan and Mia Hamm and being in school and running the mile and doing all that kind of stuff. But like, I just feel like the momentum of the downhill trajectory is miles ahead of the momentum of any kind of uphill change that we would be looking to make. And so I don't know, maybe it's a friendly debate more than anything else, but I'd just be curious in your thoughts on that.
So my thoughts are, because I'm connected to many organizations, I know firsthand there are positive things happen. I'm connected with many gym teachers, and shout out to physical education teachers.
Oh, big time.
I did not know until recently the important role that you guys and women play in preparing our military, our youth who are going to serve and go to basic training, preparing them for basic training. So I was talking to some phys ed teachers recently, and he goes, I've been personally doing that since the 80s. And then he knows of other phys ed teachers who've been doing this since, their entire career. And I didn't realize it until post-COVID that we were thinking, why are kids maybe having even a harder time than the past? Well, before, they had these amazing phys ed teachers who were preparing them quietly, with dignity and honor, to say, come after school, come before school, come at lunchtime, but they got them ready for basic training. So I thought, shout out to those phys ed teachers who've been serving our country in that way, in that capacity. So also various organizations, there are so many organizations that I'm affiliated with who show me kids who started physical education and the revising of their report cards, less trouble in school, better behavior at home, more ambition, and more, I think maybe self-worth, self-confidence, all these great things. As many of you know, Christy Ingram did this report that says 94% of women on the C-suite have a sports background. Christy is a great friend of mine, and I'm always sharing with Christy, like, we need to blow her up and to make her more, get her out here. Now she's in Australia, unfortunately, but to have her talk about the importance of fitness and sports and what it does to a young girl, especially since so many of them are quitting sports and giving up, don't want to exercise. So the more good stories that we can share, the better off we'll be. And I would think for clicks, good stories don't sell as well as bad or as much as negative. So believe me, many organizations around our nation are doing great things. Schools are doing great things. Parents, coaches, all these coaches, I would say most coaches are not paid. So for all of them, for doing all they're doing to get, their athletes ready for competition, thanks to them as well, because many great things are happening in our country. I don't want to sidestep it and say like, we don't have a problem. We have a huge problem. But I also know that people are trying. That's for sure. Yeah.
No, I'm more than happy to lose this debate, but I do have kind of a follow on for you.
Yeah, I crushed you. You didn't lose it. I crushed you.
Dominated me.
I'm over it.
But as a follow on, like what from where, and maybe this goes back to the other question about where you sit now, but like, what do you perceive as kind of the biggest threat and or challenge to normalizing a lot of these things? Because like you mentioned, we've seen grades go up on report cards because of physical health. We've seen social interactions improve because of every metric you could think of would improve because of injecting this type of thing into, in this example, the school system. So from where you sit, what is kind of the biggest challenge or hurdle that you think we need to get over?
Maybe what you guys have said earlier, messaging. Maybe we need to have more PSAs. Like when I was doing research on the President's Council, when I look back to the 60s, there were lots of commercials on YouTube that were cut in the 60s. And it talked about this national, youth sports, like superstars. And they came somewhere and they had this commercial cut, like it was like they were almost like Olympian type athletes. Or there was ads in magazines, and it basically said, they would show someone who looks out of shape, and they would talk about the President's Council. So, I think maybe we need to help promote physical activity more, get behind the messaging, do more advertisement, do more marketing, just let people know that move your way, whatever. Here's another example. We're working with museums now. So there's a move your way campaign, meaning basically do what you think is comfortable. So I'm asking museums, I have like 3 that I'm really trying to make this template work with, to help us bring their visitors in. And while you're strolling in a museum, it does give you movement. It brings on good. It makes you feel good. You're learning. There's education. There's community. All these good things that go to good health, wellness, are part of Move Your Way. So if we can make this happen in more museums than the 3 that I'm working with right now, I think that would be a good campaign, because it's just something. It's another push to make people physically active. And whatever we can do to make that happen, that's what we're going to do. So for all those folks who are willing and helping already, thank you so much for your support. For all those who have questions and have ideas, maybe go to health.gov and you let us know. Good ideas are useful to us, and we will, examine them. But I just want everyone to know that we are trying. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying.
So we had some real open-ended questions for the last few. I'm going to ask a much more direct question, and I don't know if you know the answer. This is a tough one. It gets into policy and things, but you mentioned that your unnamed public figure was very proud of their performance on the Presidential Fitness Challenge when they were young.
Yes.
Is the Presidential Fitness Challenge ever coming back?
Rachel Fisher is working on it with diligence right now. Her and Katrina Piercy, they are working on it, but there's been some things tied up with, again, with legal issues and other organizations. So I would say we have said that is one of the priorities. Admiral Reed is also on this, because I've shared with them, that since I often wear something that has a Sports Council logo on it, people come up to me in the streets and they'll share their stories about how much that council meant to them when they were younger. And often, as I said to Rachel, I wish the council members were with me when I see these, sometimes men or women with tears in their eyes saying how much that badge meant to them and their mom or their dad, or they still have it. And like me, I still have mine. I have my certificates. I have all that stuff, because I thought one day I'm going to be on this council. One day I'm going to be on here, and one day I'm going to be giving these patches and these coins and these stickers. And one day I'm going to talk to Drew and Alex about this amazing council we have and how we're going to keep fine tuning it to make it, just like America, that shining light on the hill. We just keep working at it. That's all.
It's an interesting conversation. Not to go down the rabbit hole because we got to close up here pretty soon, but I did do a deep dive on the presidential fitness challenge, and there were some criticisms of it, right? It was not the original iteration was not necessarily based on the greatest evidence. There's lots of debate. And perhaps most notably, your performance on the presidential fitness challenge, nobody ever gave you guidance based on it. It was just, you take it and now it's kind of up to you to figure out whatever. I think a really cool future for it could be that, like, maybe there's an app, maybe there's a website, who knows, where you plug in how you did, and it tells you what your strengths and weaknesses are and what you can work on and types of exercise you can do to get better at the things you struggle with. Who knows? But everybody still talks about the presidential fitness challenge, even though it hasn't been around for a while. It is clearly something culturally meaningful, and it would be really cool to see it come back.
Yes. So I often say that Rachel, Admiral Reed, and Katrina, they're the brains, and I'm the mega mouthpiece where I just try to get the attention, because what you just suggested and said, they're working on all those issues. But you also got to remember, we represent the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, and everything we do has to be dotted with the I and crossed with the T. And it goes through lots of I's to make sure that we're not making any mistakes, especially sloppy mistakes. Sometimes mistakes happen and you've tried your best to avoid them, but we got to make sure we're doing everything the right way, because we don't want to make situations worse. We're here to make them better. So I suggest that we're doing all we can. We're working hard to make these things happen. I think as we get more partners and more people under this umbrella, that they'll be helpful to us. And we are making inroads. We just keep trying every day to keep pushing forward, to keep making it happen, because, as I said, we're Americans, not Americans. We'll make it happen. Just like everything else, it's work. If it was easy, we wouldn't have these issues. We probably wouldn't even be on this podcast if it was so easy. So we'll just keep working at it.
Awesome.
I mean, I can also imagine that just the sociocultural differences between now and back then, you think about implementing. I mean, you can think about how the armies responded to implementing a new PT test.
First of all the research that's been done now, like research and exercise is a prescription now. There are doctors who prescribe exercise. These studies through Humana, there's a doctor, I think Stubbs in England, and he does all these amazing things. And actually, I'm not sure if I shared it or told you before, but there's some research now from Dr. Stubbs and ASICS that says if you're a gamer and you exercise and you're physically fit, you will become a better gamer. So there is I'll send you guys the research on it, and there's a video on Netflix or Amazon or Prime, I forgot which one, about these 3 or 4 people who were gamers and exercised for 12 weeks. And all of them were already elite class. They all moved up dramatically, up to 50% in some different categories. And what they did, the only difference was they exercised. What exercise did for them while they were gaming, they were quicker on their response. Their anxiety decreased. The way they felt while they're sitting there, they felt better. They moved better. They thought more clearly. And all these things are things that we already know that exercise does. So how do we maybe combine ourselves with this massive machine, the gaming community, to show them that, listen, if you want your gamers to be better, or if you are a gamer and you want to be a better gamer, be physically active and move more. That will improve your scores, your skills, your ranking, and everything else. So there's some potential and some great hope there as well.
That's that better bad choice you were talking about. If people are going to game anyway, well, we can at least make them better gamers.
Hey, don't sleep on gamers, man. Those guys are making millions of dollars. I've seen those documentaries on those competitive gamers, crushing it.
Right.
Well, Rob, we don't want to take up a ton of your time, but to close things out, and this can be, for yourself or for the council, like, what is the best way for people to learn more? Where can they go? Where can they, like you mentioned, offer up ideas? Where can they find out more about the stuff that you guys are doing?
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. Health.gov. That's where you can find a lot of our great information. You can also go to the CDC.gov. They also have tons of great information. Listen to your podcast, because you guys dispel great information, and you have amazing guests on who are doing their best to make, I guess, America fit again, or fitter. Just use many different sources and many resources, because they all will while many of them are similar, one of them might spark something in you to get you to change your habits and to improve your habits and to become better and more fit, more effective, more efficient, and become an advocate of fitness and health and bring family members with you. The better your family, the more fit your family is, I think the better they'll enjoy their life. Health insurance companies, they want more fit people because your premiums go down, you're more effective at work, you're just more effective in life, and you're more present in life. You're able to go to your children's games and your concerts, and because you're not tired, you don't want to come home and just plop down. You want to be engaged in the life of vigor.
Awesome. Well, you've obviously got a massive platform. You're doing a ton of work. So thank you. We appreciate your efforts, and thanks for coming on to talk to us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks as always, Rob.
Hey, Alex, let's cover our ass real quick.
Oh, great idea, Drew. All right, guys. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Before you go, please rate and review the pod on the listening platform of your choice. You can also visit us on our website at www.mopsinmos.com. That's mops, the letter N, mos.com. You can check out the library of podcast episodes, our latest blog entries, any helpful resources, and also sign up for our newsletter.
Drew nailed it. Just to underline a couple of things, the podcast entries have in-depth show notes on the website. So if you missed anything or you want to read any of the research we talk about, it is all there. You can, at the bottom of the website, sign up with your email and receive future updates from us. The blog posts go a little bit more in-depth in kind of written form on a couple of topics we get questions about all the time. But most importantly, I just want to ask all you guys, our best way the word gets out is absolutely word of mouth. So tell your friends, tell the people you work with, anybody you think would find it useful. Thanks for spreading the word.
If you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot us an email at either Drew or Alex at mopsinmos.com.
Or there's a contact form on the website.
Thank you.